everyone, my name is Sarah Whitaker and I'm an educational technology expert, and I'm here to help you develop your skills in teaching online. Today I want to talk a little bit about the chat room. I've mentioned the chat room in previous videos, and it can be an online teacher's best friend or your worst enemy. So you really need to be aware of a few things before you dive deep into using the chat tool with your students. The first thing is you want to set expectations. You want your students to know what is and is not appropriate. You want to ensure that there's no bullying. You want to make sure that for the most part that they're staying on topic. Your little side topics here and there is okay. You don't want to stifle their personalities. But you also don't want the class clown to take control of the chat room and take control of the class. So making sure that you set some boundaries, some expectations at the very beginning of your class, and write those out in your learning management system so that all the students are aware that these are your expectations, and stick with those. Again, the chat room can become a beast if not used wisely. The second thing you want to do is decide how you want to use or how you want to set up your private chat. So in each virtual learning software, you're going to have different setting options. At the institute that I work at, we use Collaborate Ultra in Blackboard. And actually, their settings for the private chat are fantastic. As an instructor, I can decide if I only want private chats between me and the students. If I don't mind if they have private chats, and it's okay, they can have as many private chats as they want. Or if they're going to have private chats, I can moderate those private chats. So it's not really a private chat, but it's a private chat between two students, and I'm the eyes and ears in that chat room as well. So that is a great tool to have available for you. If you're using something like Zoom, you don't have as much control over the private chats. You basically get to turn them on or off. So this is something you're going to have to decide with your students what you want to do. I really, really like the idea of my students being able to privately chat with me, sending me a message, letting me know that they're lost or letting me know that they don't understand something that the other students in the classroom don't need to read. However, with Zoom, you either have it on or off. So again, you just have to be aware with your students and whether you want to have those private chats on. If you know that there's some bullying happening in your class, you might want to turn off those private chats and just make sure that everything stays in the open main room. The next thing you want to do is actually nominate moderators or a moderator for the class. So if you have a large class or if you have a particularly chatty class, you want to nominate a moderator. So this is a student who will actually check the chat room, make sure everything's okay. Maybe you give them extra permissions in the session. For example, in Collaborate Ultra, they become a presenter. In Zoom, they become a co-host. So that if you're muting all of the other students, they can still unmute themselves and ask you a question. So, maybe if some students are finding that they really don't understand you and you're really focused on your presentation and explaining everything, but your students are completely lost and you haven't seen that happening in the chat room, that student can unmute themselves and say, "Miss, please, can you slow down? We don't understand you. There's a lot of questions in the chat room." So this is really important because it's hard to keep your focus on the chat and on your presentation or on your explanation. So if you're needing to give 5-minute explanation of a concept, that moderator can help keep an eye on the chat room and make sure that everybody's okay. With that in mind, it is difficult to stay, in the chat room and in the main presentation tool. So remind the students like, hey, I'm presenting right now. I'll answer any of your questions afterwards, so don't panic. Also let the students know, you can minimize your chat. You don't need to be in the chat room all the time. For some students, it's just really difficult to stay focused on the chat and on the presentation. It's one or the other, and sometimes they don't even know why they're lost. And it's because they're focusing on the chat room, what's happening there, and not focusing on what you are explaining in your lesson. So sometimes it's important to tell your students, hey guys, I'm going to do a 5-minute explanation here. I need you to minimize your chat and focus on my screen for 5 minutes. After, we'll go back into the chat. You can ask or answer any questions that you have. So getting that practice together. If it's available in your virtual learning environment to turn the chats off, that's great. Not always available in the middle of sessions, but if that is available, that's something that you might want to do periodically throughout the lesson. Finally, you want to share those saved chats. So every class, at the end of every virtual session, you have a chat that has been saved. In Collaborate Ultra, it's done automatically for you when you record a session. So anytime you click record, that chat is automatically recorded. In Zoom, once you end the meeting, the chat will get downloaded to your computer for you. Now, really great is share those chats with your students. It kind of keeps accountability there. So your students know that everything's being recorded. And that's where you want to go back to that tip number 1, set expectations. Let them know, hey, the chat's being recorded and I will be sharing the chat with you at the end of every class. So you share it with them in the LMS system or your Blackboard, Google Classroom, whichever tool they're using to share content with your students. That's where you want to share your chats with them. It also allows for those students who really can't focus on the 2 elements, the chat room and the presentation, what's going on in the classroom at the same time. It gives them a chance afterwards to kind of catch up, especially students who are slow readers and who really can't keep up with what's happening in the chat room. So that gives them the chat afterwards so they can review everything for themselves afterwards. Also, you as an instructor can review and make sure that you haven't missed anything. So you can scan through the chat and make sure that there was nothing inappropriate happening, or maybe there was a question you missed and you can start that conversation in the discussion board in your learning management system. So carry on the chat in the discussion board after the class is over. So I hope these tips help you with your chat room. Remember, you want to set expectations, decide how to manage your private chats, nominate a moderator when the chat room is getting a little bit too busy, minimize the chat when appropriate, and also share your saved chats.